Welcome back to another episode of Bleav in Broncos on the Bleav Network. That is Bree Maestas. I am Patrick Chiotti. Hi, Bree. Had to switch it up on you. How you doing?
You did. It caught me off guard. Every time you hear your voice, it's like you got to look back. You got to be ready. You don't know what the anticipation is bringing. But hi, Pat. Good to see you.
Good to see you as well. Bree, it's here. It's finally here. We've been talking about it for weeks, months, years, it seems. Broncos training camp is underway officially. The construction is going on in Dove Valley right now. Fans will be able to be at practices here very soon, not on the berm, unfortunately, but they will be in the bleachers while construction is happening. But the Broncos are back. Broncos football is back, and man, I am really excited. I'm getting the itch. It's coming back. How are you feeling now that Broncos football is officially back in swing?
Well, I need to touch on something because there feels like a complete switch up, whether it comes to any hesitations that Broncos country had heading into last season. But mostly, I think the national narrative and perspective has really changed. And in fact, it's been flipped on its head. And now that's giving me some pause. So I kind of love how the offseason really ramps up. And then you get a feel for how the Broncos are viewed, outside of our little bubble in which you may hear on Bleav in the Broncos or any other podcast that you ingest. But it should only be the show. I'm just saying, I'm worried that now that it's flipped, that the expectations are a little bit lofty. The limits that are being placed on this team are pretty big, that they're giving me some pause. So maybe you can help me work through that, because I'm starting to feel like I should be doubting heavier because it's against the grain.
Well, I mean, you're right to feel that way. I think when you're kind of viewed as underdogs, like they were last season, right? Like worst roster in football, allegedly, not a playoff team, allegedly. All of the preseason doubt, questions, especially surrounding a rookie quarterback. It kind of like, I kind of talked about this on Broncos Country Tonight last week. But it's like when you are viewed that way as the underdog, as like no one's thinking twice about the Denver Broncos and Bo Nix, it kind of makes you hungrier. Like it only makes you want to silence the crowd. And I think they did that in a big way. Defense was awesome. Zach Allen had a career year. Nick Bonito had a career year. The defense was absolutely outstanding. They have the best defensive player in the NFL, a quarterback who probably could have won Offensive Rookie of the Year had it not been for Jaden Daniels. I think there was it exceeded expectations last year, and now that bar has been raised so high that you're like, can they even match what they did last year? Like I feel where you're coming from. So I think there's a lot of hope and there's a lot of those high expectations, but I think seeing the talent that we had last season, where so many people were doubting, it kind of leads us to think, man, maybe this team is a lot better than we thought. It's definitely better than they thought, but maybe it's a lot better than we thought. And with the continuity of keeping Sean Payton and Bo Nix together, Vance Joseph calling the defense for, with a lot of the same players, couple extra nice, talented pieces added, I think there's definitely validation in those expectations. But Bree, what we're going to talk about on this show is not going to help your worries, because it was announced today that second-year quarterback Bo Nix is the 64th best player in the NFL as voted on by the players. It is not media. It is not executives. This is purely the NFL top 100 players list voted by the players. And man, Bree, the people were upset that Bo Nix was even in the top 100 conversation. Let me ask you this. What do you think this says about how the players in this league view Bo Nix as a quarterback and a football player?
Yeah, I think it was my reaction as well, Pat, when I saw that number come up. Or I was your sophomore, heading into your sophomore year, right? You are being ranked almost at the halfway point. So 64, nothing to really. I don't want to. I don't want to emphasize that it's like too low, too high, too anything. I was shocked that he was on the list in general. And I think at 64 is a real pat on the back for where he's at. But it's hard to not be excited about that because we hear the way that Sean Payton has spoke about Bo Nix even during the drafting process, after the fateful day. And so I don't know if we should be necessarily shocked that the rest of the league, including the players, are parroting that whatsoever. So I just wanted to start off with, I was shocked first and foremost. It does not help whatsoever to tamper my expectations, but it's really striking because the rankings coming from players, they don't really pull punches. They are notorious for during their offseason workouts, really having those conversations of the guys, whether it's on opposing sides of the field or on the same where they're striking. And Bo Nix earning the recognition from his NFL peers, it speaks volumes. So really excited about this, but what I think it tells us is he's got that peer respect. He's breaking in at a really solid spot at 64. And I think that his play and the way that he commands the offense, specifically in his rookie year, really resonated personally with other players. And the playoff impact, right? You make the playoffs in your first, whether it was a wild card round or late round, he's quarterbacked the Broncos to their first playoff berth since 2015. I think it's a major turnaround that peers clearly respect. And it's a momentum builder. So you've got a young guy who's out there entering his second year with that kind of recognition. It builds credibility and confidence across the locker room. So if your own guys on your team are saying those things at high volumes, you can take it with a grain of salt because they got to say what they have to say. But if the entire league is then also singing your praises, I think it tells us that we've got a really strong foundation for 2025. And if it's just that part of football, if it's just the offense and the quarterback and the guy commanding the ship, things could be a lot worse. The last time the Broncos were able to say that, I think, I've got dust in my near vicinity that's older than that.
Geez, don't talk about Peyton Manning like that. No, Bree, I think you hit it on the head. Like the fact that not just players on the Broncos, obviously the players on the Broncos are going to have high praises for Bo, but the rest of the league, and listening to some of the players that were talking in that video about Bo Nix, it was like they were almost like shocked. They were almost shocked that he had the poise that he did as a rookie. They point, I think it was Solomon Thomas from the Jets pointed out, he started off, kind of sloppy, but then it was just like a switch flipped, right? And that's like it. It's interesting to hear other players have that same perspective. There's another player who I can't remember his name. He's on the Giants, but he was teammates with Bo in college, and he said, "Oh yeah, I knew that this guy was going to be better than." The five other quarterbacks drafted before him. And that is a strong statement. That is a very strong statement. I know there's a lot of mutual respect between, Bo Nix and Jaden Daniels. They have a relationship spanning back to the college days. So there's no bad blood there. But the fact that it's always like a slap in the face of a player, like, oh, you were the sixth quarterback taken in your draft class. Yeah, well, that doesn't really matter because it doesn't matter where your draft slot is. It matters how you're playing on the field. And I think Bo Nix did a fantastic job last season as a rookie, just showing that he even belongs. Hearing Pat Surtain talk about him as well, it's someone coming from a blue chip program who was a top pick himself, the best player in his position, the best defensive player in the league, is having high praise for a quarterback like this. I think it's incredible that Bo is getting this recognition. But something else I want to point out about Bo, Bree, this Sean Payton talked about this in his press conference. This offseason, Bo Nix took the time to reach out to former Saints quarterback Drew Brees and spend, I think it was like 4 or 5 days with him and working on his throwing mechanics. My God, we have one. We have our quarterback. I don't want to hear any more Bo Nix slander. Like I'm very excited for year 2, but this is the kind of stuff, the extracurricular that we need from our quarterback. Take this shit seriously. Bo Nix is going to do everything he can to climb up that top 100 list. I'll say I'm a little disappointed that he wasn't 69.
Would have been nice, because then all the haters and doubters could then get a tattoo of that number specifically on them for the rest of their lives. But I will say, Pat, you highlighted something very important that I want to reflect on, because it's really pertinent to the conversation that we're going to have today, is the idea that Bo Nix, if he started slow, if he made a mistake, what an important personality trait and characteristic it is for an NFL player, is to have kind of that quick turnaround time on learning, and that taking that opportunity when you seemingly fail to use that to get better and to learn and to progress and kind of just flip the switch. You got to go. You got to get better in the next rep. And I think Bo Nix is explicitly good at that, not only for his high football IQ, but the maturity that he's shown throughout 2024. We just saw it. I really wanted to highlight that point that you said, because it's really important as we continue to discuss potential breakout players for this year, and not to steal the thunder of the episode, but it is implied so greatly to the individuals that we're speaking of. Are they able to take any sort of bad rep and kind of learn from it, grow from it? And I think that's why we saw such exponential growth from Bo Nix game to game, is he's just able to process that at a high level, and he's learning from it. So those things that are, you're talking about meeting with Drew Brees, the things that were pain points in his scouting, he's now working to correct them, which means as he's feeling that through the process, it's all muscle memory. So, I mean, how can you not be excited about a guy who's going to take the work that take the step that he needs to put in, the work that he needs to do? Like, it's all relevant, guys. This isn't someone who's taking the off season, disappearing, and you don't hear from them and they just think they have it all figured out. He's putting the work in. So that's what I respect out of the process.
Yeah. He is taking that initiative, right? It's not like Sean Payton saying, hey, you need to go meet with Drew and get in the playbook. It's him saying, hey, I still want to improve. I still want to get better. I know I can be better. And those are the things that the greats have done. You know, guys like Tom Brady, guys like Peyton Manning, really just honed in on what they can still do better. A coach of mine once said, if you don't think that you need to get better, then you've hit your peak. And I think that's such a strong statement. Bree, like you pointed out, we're going to talk about in this episode some of the players that we think could be breakout players from Broncos training camp this season, and why. So Bree and I have picked 3 players from the Denver Broncos who we think are going to be breakout players, and why. Bree, let's just go back and forth. Your first player, who's that first player that you think is going to have a breakout year?
Sure. I think this goes into the last sentence that I just said about taking the things that you didn't do well previously and trying to improve on them going forward. We saw this player, and it's Marvin Mims. I think it's his time in Denver, because he's no longer just going to be deemed a gadget guy. I think he'll be an occasional deep threat, and stepping into a role when you've got a Cortland Sutton demanding a lot of attention on the outside. You get a quarterback that's returning with you talked about the continuity that exists between Bo Nix and Sean Payton. Well, now Marvin Mims gets to have that time and anticipation, because you get an opportunity for a guy like Mims to feast on a lot of the things that Bo Nix is good in already. So if that continues to really improve, then you've got Marvin Mims right there looking to have a big year of production. I think there's going to be a lot of layered routes and concepts that are happening, and we'll get an eye on that during training camp, but preseason is honestly where we're going to see a lot of that. I think efficiency is going to be the name of the game, and I think development through Marvin Mims is going to help the passing game in a ton of ways, not just explosivity. I think it's going to be really important for him to carve a role here, and this seems like the breakout year and breakout season to do so.
I 1,000% see it. I liked how they kind of tried to use Mims as a downfield guy at times last season, especially, we saw it in the Bengals game, right? Just trying to trying to take advantage of his speed. And one of the things that he was really, really great at Oklahoma was catching the ball downfield and contested catches. Him only being, 5'11", about 205, 200 pounds. He's not the biggest receiver, but he was really, really good with contested catches in college. I was really hoping to see that when he came into the NFL, and he couldn't quite get it down. So I think seeing him kind of progress in that way last season, I'm really hopeful that they use him in that sense this season. Bree, one of my first player that I have as a breakout player is the rookie wide receiver, Pat Bryant. Speaking to the efficiency aspect, I can see Pat Bryant being that Michael Thomas type role player where it's a lot of quick passes, a lot of underneath stuff. Just get him the ball, crucial downs. When you're trying to get to the sticks, he is a guy that will always be able to find the sticks. And that's the type of player that Bo Nix needs in this offense. It's the type of player that honestly they were missing out of this offense last season. In the last couple of years, really, there hasn't been that player that's like, oh, it's 3rd and 4, 3rd and 5. We need to get a first down. Who can we go to? I think that this is the solution to that problem. And it's not to say like, Pat Bryant is going to take snaps away from Cortland Sutton. Put them on the field together, damn it. Like you can use them in different situations. It's like having Tim Patrick and Cortland Sutton on the same field. Are you going to take one guy? No, you put them both out there. Get as many big targets as you can, but strong hands. He's already shown to be a solidified route runner, really smart individual, high IQ. All of the people that were hating on this pick, my goodness, it's going to come back and slap you in the face so hard you don't even know what's coming. I digress. I think that he could potentially have a good breakout year for the Broncos offense. Bree, who's your second breakout player?
Well, I love the pick, Pat. I got to touch on this real quick because I never understood the duplicity factor of being like, no, we already got someone who looks exactly the same. Yes, but are their skill sets the same? Even if it's as such, if you have two players who are producing at that level and they can be a part of the contested catch era, and you can have them both on like dueling sides of the field, the fact that you would dismiss that and be like, oh, I don't know, it just feels like we already have that. Pat Bryant's got the size, he's got the strong hands, he plays a physical brand of football that I think really complements Mims and Sutton. And so he's already there, like it's already factored in to be that guy who's going to have to take that next step up. And you've already put the draft capital into that. So now it's the ROI factor. What are you going to see out of Pat Bryant this year? And it's going to be definition making, almost like you have to know what you have with this pick. And for some guys, it's a little bit less than you anticipated. But Pat, I'm glad you asked, right? We got to go into my second player. And I think it has to be Talanoa Hufanga for me. You got the safety here. He's my wild card pick because the breakout conversation really doesn't come from a guy who's looking to make a name for himself in the league. We already saw it when Hufanga left the 49ers. I mean, there was those sad highlight reels of 49ers fans basically being distraught that he was left. And you saw that some with Dre Greenlaw as well. But I think Hufanga is that type of player where you have the highlight reel to be able to watch all of that back and really say, man, that is an impact player who's going to be sorely missed for any secondary. And now the Broncos have him. On paper, that's a scary sight for any of the opponents here in 2025. But the reason I think his play specifically is going to be standout because he's already made a name for himself. Now he gets a fresh start post-injury. He gets a new scheme with Vance Joseph. And Vance Joseph is known for taking the skills that he has within his roster and building a defense around that. So you know that he's going to be heavily working to set the tone with Hufanga. And he brings instincts, physicality, and just a sense of pure energy. And a lot of people thought I was going to be very high on this acquisition anyways, which I don't like being pigeonholed. You haven't figured me out. But yeah, you were right. The style of play is going to be what's been sorely missed on this team, I guess, since the likes of Kareem Jackson left the team in the league, simply because the game has changed. What I think is important with Hufanga is he's been able to kind of keep it somewhere in the middle. You still have that high-speed downhill threat, but you don't have the head-crashing helmet-to-helmet plays that are going to come with that. But it's not that he's just a hard-hitting player. He's also kind of a ball hawk out there on the defense. So I could see a lot of game-changing momentum shifting plays where he's able to make a play on the ball, whether it's batted down passes or interceptions, which are incredibly hard to predict. I think his skill set and his type of play is going to lead to those momentum shifts you need later in the season. Knock on wood, as long as health is in check, I think it's going to be really interesting. So I see a big year simply because it's time to make your name for yourself here on the Broncos roster.
I love the pick, Bree. I really do, especially with his past injuries, missing time. All that stuff kind of weighs on you mentally as a player. You can only imagine like what was going through his head. And this is a player who's going into a second contract potentially. And that's got to be hard, but a fresh start is always great. I love the pick for a breakout guy. As you were talking, you mentioned Kareem Jackson, and at the same time, I was thinking, God, it's kind of nice that we're going to have another hard-hitting safety in Denver, because it feels like every era of Broncos football has had at least one of those guys who's just a hammer. Just comes downhill, no regard for human life. Started with Atwater, and then we get Lynch, and then we get Brian Dawkins, and we've had Kareem Jackson, and we've had all these guys, and it's like if that is the style of football that this Broncos team really, really needs. It's just like I don't care what color jersey you're wearing. I'm coming downhill and I'm going to smack you. Bree, the injury factor is massive, and my second player is a guy who kind of had a breakout year last year, but it was also hampered by an injury. So I'm saying this season is going to be his true breakout year, and I'll tell you why. And it is Riley Moss. I was so impressed with what Riley Moss did last season, going into training camp, going into the regular season. This was a guy who didn't play much. He played a couple special teams reps in the season before that, dealing with the core injury. And then last season, just playing out of his mind. He made it so impossible for opposing offenses to operate. And then he gets hit with the injury bug, came back, struggled against T. Higgins. God, who would have thought? But still played very, very well. The addition of Jahdae Barron might throw a wrench in it, but I don't think so. I think Riley Moss has solidified himself as an NFL cornerback. Now it's time for him to play a complete season. I need to see him play for a full 17, 18 games if we make the playoffs, 19, 20, who knows? But I think that this is a guy who allows Vance Joseph to call a wider variety of schemes, because he matches up so well. He's got the speed. He's got the physicality outside. And he was very aggressive in the run game. God, it's so awesome to watch him come downhill on run plays, because he is a very solid tackler in the flats. I think that if Riley Moss can stay healthy and they can really balance out his role with someone like Jahdae Barron, I think that he has the opportunity to really, really ball out and break out this season.
I think we see a trend now with the direction that we're going, but I don't hate it. And I think that that's a great caliber of a choice, simply because you noted it, right? There was a little bit of an uptick in the breakout category when it comes to Riley Moss, but an injury is going to slow down just about anyone when it comes to finishing a season strong, healthy, and at top of mind, right? But we also noted, I think recently, that when the momentum shifts when it comes to injuries, it can really impact the state of the team as a whole. Riley Moss is the top type of guy, and I'm not saying he's the same caliber as Patrick Surtain, but when Riley Moss went down with an injury, that cornerback depth isn't exactly where you would want it to be, because question marks start popping up on who's going to be the next guy up when it comes to an individual of that status going down. I think when we saw that with Moss, it really let us know that something is simmering beneath the surface, because it feels like this is the year where he could tie it all together. You've got the freaky athleticism, the speed, the instincts. He's got, the full seasons under the belt really isn't something that's going to happen, but you get a little bit cautious when it comes to the types of injuries that he's faced. But I would just like to see it be the year where we don't have to question the talent that we have available, and maybe start to parse out who exists on the depth chart that wouldn't leave us scratching our heads if they had to fill in on a day's notice, which I think Riley Moss proved early on, and now he's got the potential to really be a breakout candidate and a breakout star. I think that's why I kind of laughed a little bit when that was your choice, because it ties in somewhat specifically to the next person I'm going to talk about, because Jonah Ellis is my number 3. And I think this is a really under the radar breakout pick, because the Broncos need somebody. They need someone who's going to be running opposite of what they already have in a Nick Bonito. You've got the need for someone who can win consistently on early downs. And Jonah Ellis was able to make that impact pretty early coming into his NFL existence. And maybe it's the pedigree that serves well for that. And unfortunately, he was also hit with the injury bug. You have almost a freak accident of that fracture to, I believe, was the scapula. So it wasn't even a shoulder injury. It was like a back and shoulder combined. So he had the surgery to stabilize it, which I think begs the question of whether or not he's going to be ready. It looks like he has already been practicing at some capacity. And if he's ready to go for the season, I just think that the direction that the Broncos are trying to build defensively is aggressive, and it's high effort. It's smart football. Jonah Ellis is a technician. And I think it gets lost a little bit on what he's being asked to do. I think he could really shortly make a name for himself on what Vance Joseph wants to do and what he's asking these edges and setting the tone. So I think if Ellis starts really racking up what you see production-wise, I think you could be almost shocked. And it would answer a couple of questions when it comes to what the market looks like in general, and then what contract negotiations are looking like for the Broncos defensively. So if Jonah Ellis has it, then you're no longer circling the drain on whether or not you have to retain some of these other key pieces of the roster, which is why I think it's really important to note that breakout candidate is kind of the expectation here for a lot of the guys on this roster.
I see what you're doing. I see how you're tying this in. Yeah. Jonah Ellis is still really young. That's the other thing. He's going to be 22 this year. Ooh, that's crazy. That's crazy. That's a lot of time left for him to keep growing. And he does have that NFL pedigree. Sibling is in the league. His dad was a Bronco. But this edge room for the Broncos is also getting a little deeper too, with Q Robinson, Dondre Tillman as well being a big factor. They just re-signed Coop this last year, and he's made a great name for himself. They're going to have some tough decisions, and we'll talk about contract extensions here in a second. I like to pick. My third player, Bree, is an interesting one, because this is a guy that had a decent preseason last year, undrafted guy, playing in a position that we really need some answers to. Lavelle Bailey. Yes, Drew Sanders is still in the mix as an inside linebacker, but is he just going to be a one-trick pony as a blitzer, with his athleticism? We haven't really seen him do well in coverage, so that's to be seen. But that position in itself poses a good, strong opportunity for Lavelle Bailey to break out, especially in training camp. Singleton's coming back from the injury. Greenlaw is back, but are we scared a little bit of what could happen? Maybe. And I think that this helps push guys like Justin Strnad, like Drew Sanders, Lavelle Bailey showed last training camp and last preseason that he could be a viable player. He's still really young, but this, with Vance Joseph and this coaching staff, I think that they could put him in a really good position. He's been around the team for a year. He played in the preseason last year, had that great pick six. Now it's his time to show what he has learned over the last year or so, and how he has prepared. I think that he has a good opportunity to ball out in training camp, show what he can do in the preseason, and make the Broncos make a tough decision on Alex Singleton. That's the thing, is you could cut Alex Singleton if he's slow coming back from the ACL. You could save a little bit of money. You still have a good player in hands. You still have Sanders. You still have Strnad. Let it roll, right? Let it ride. But we got to have players that can execute, are healthy, are on the field. I think Lavelle Bailey very well be that breakout candidate and provide us with a little bit of depth and some answers to the inside linebacker spot.
And I love it, specifically because the Broncos got rid of someone like a Cody Barton. Now you're kind of where's that rangy midfield threat where you're covering the tight ends that the Broncos seem to be annihilated by in seasons past. I like what I saw out of Lavelle Bailey when given the opportunity. So in this next season, and I think that's just the conversation seems to be swarming on the idea that this is these guys' years for taking that next additional step. And I think Bailey has the opportunity to do so. But you got to develop quickly and you got to get downhill in a hurry. I think with losing guys like Josie Jewell over the years, having a question mark surrounding Drew Sanders, like there's a clear identified path for Bailey to really stand out and carve out some serious time. But I think what it points to is the idea that it's creating this pressure and this sense of urgency with some of the older guys or some of those really the ones we already think are carved out, I think have somebody right on their heels. And that's what breeds greatness in teams. When you have a big roster full of question marks, that's not great for anything. But as this team really starts to find its identity and its reasonings, a young and hungry team starts pushing those veterans to the point where they have to work harder. I'm not saying it's easy for NFL players to kind of take a step back, but once you get that contract and you get paid, you constantly need the incentivization and the motivation to continue to go out and produce. And I think that Lavelle Bailey starts raising that threshold and that thermometer on a lot of guys.
Yeah, I agree. And it's going to be a trend, as we see it all the time. As younger guys come into the league, guys start getting a little bit older, start dealing with injuries. There's always someone waiting to take your job. So those are the players that we believe will be breakout players for the Broncos from training camp going into this season. Bree, before we get out of here, I just wanted to touch on this. Brandon Cristal published an article a couple days ago talking about contract extensions. It appears that Cortland Sutton is going to be the first player that the Broncos will prioritize to get extended. Kind of a shocker, honestly, considering, where his age is at and the cost of wide receiver contracts. But on the other hand, it's not really that shocking because he's been very steady and he's been a very solid, underrated option for the Broncos. Do you think it, and also during this time, Court has been participating in training camp, which is kind of weird, considering there's so many other situations where players are going through these negotiations and they'll sit out of training camp and in case they get hurt. Court's not doing that. Court is fully participating. So it's kind of interesting. What do you think about, Court being the first guy that they're prioritizing, and who do you think is next on their list?
You got me thinking, because why wouldn't it be Court? Although why would it be? Like, how are they prioritizing? Is it oldest guy on the team, or not oldest, but longest tenured. The Broncos clearly value Cortland Sutton, and I think the same goes for Court's camp. I think that he values his time with the Broncos, but at the end of the day, it's about whether or not you're being paid appropriately, and that's all your decision. Like, you can allow teams to place a value on you, but only you know what you're going to play for and whether or not you're going to test a market elsewhere or kind of allow that to devolve. I think a deal seems highly probable at this point. I know it was a big question mark until we got, but now that he's partaking in camp activities, I think it's pretty much a details and crossing T's and dotting I's. Or if anything's left to chance, I think it's going to be last minute. Now, I don't think it's going to come down to a fax machine malfunction or anything, but I think Court's just about done. And so I feel good about that. I would think next, we were talking about prioritizing Zach Allen, but the Broncos have a lot of fluidity now. Their flexibility is increasing post Russell Wilson. So I think it's a good idea that they've absorbed the last of their dead cap hit that they can. And they're going to have some headroom to give this team the opportunity to get the guys that they need to shore up. Zach Allen seems pretty high for me. What I like about this negotiation period, though, whether it was the rookie contracts or the ones that are ongoing now, is that we hear less and less about it. And I'm in the camp staunchly now that I've had some time to marinate on it. The less we hear, the better. If we were hearing a whole ton of rumors and floods and there was posts about it from different national big heads talking about it, it would mean that there was distrust amongst the franchise, the player, the agent, et cetera, because they would be trying to leverage each other. And in fact, it's happening behind closed doors. There's not a whole lot of question marks. People aren't missing. There's not wanted posters posted around Dove Valley. I think it's all looking really strong, which is great for the Broncos, great for the players. Critical defensive pieces, I think, are the high target value here. Everything else is going to have to be a pick and a choose and see what really bursts from 2025. Like, the offensive spark is going to lead to those other question marks.
Yeah, I'm very excited to see who will be next on this list because once that next domino falls, it's going to be interesting to see where they go and what they do from there. That is going to do it for us on this episode of Bleav in the Broncos. Make sure you tune in next week as training camp continues for the Denver Broncos. We're going to try and have some big name guests on the program to talk about fantasy outlook and which players from the Denver Broncos you should be picking up in your fantasy draft this season. Make sure you subscribe to the show on whatever podcast platform you're listening to us on. Make sure you follow Bree and myself on social media at Bree Maestas 303, at Patrick Chiotti. Make sure you follow at Bleav Network as well. And we will see you next time. Go Broncos.
Go Broncos.